Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
Whew. Hey, Kevin, how are you? And look, thanks to everybody who listens to this podcast at a later date than when we're doing it live on X and Twitter. Like, we appreciate you guys too. And we'd love it for you to join our show. We generally broadcast Wednesdays at 9 o'clock. We cover a lot of libertarian ideas. Kevin is obviously this left-leaning leftist Chase Oliver fan libertarian, and I am totally like
Chase Oliver.
I am totally
basically
like
communist. I mean, I do have the Communist Manifesto.
I'm in the Dave Smith camp, and we battle it out every night. No, what we do is occasionally find things that we disagree about, and then we realize that even though we kind of disagree on the problems, we come to like a solution that we can both live with. And I think that libertarians, liberty-minded Republicans, real liberals, I think they can benefit from conversations like that. So that's what I think people could benefit from this conversation.
100%. We talk it out, which works a lot better when we're talking here than talking on Twitter.
This is true because it gets awkward, man.
It does. All right. So but we got a few things going on today. We're going to talk about, I titled the show Lame Duck WW3.
Oh my God, that guy. I want to swat that guy. He's lost his mind.
You know, it's just leaving us a little present on the way out.
Sure.
Great.
Sure.
Legacy Zach's all over it.
Yeah.
Put Putin and Zelensky in the octagon.
Finish it.
Yeah. There we go.
I mean, yeah, like a battalion led by like Cheney and Lindsey Graham. Like, send them over to Ukraine. Let them fight. That would be awesome. Like, you guys go for it. You live your dream. Live it. You know, be who you need to be.
But so we got that. I also talked about. I said, welcome to the nanny state. We'll talk about RFK.
RFK is going to save us from.
Tim is a bigger fan than I am.
I do. I like him. He's fun.
Yeah. And then maybe we'll get to it. And hopefully people don't yell at me over the time. But Rochester students arrested for anti-Israel posters. I could have put anti-Semitic posters. I could have put both. We'll talk about that too, and whether or not what the posters were and whether the arrest made sense. So maybe we'll get to that stuff too. Just a little bit of New York State news.
We need to do that. And level. I think you and I are going to be very, very close on this one. Like, I think we're going to be like, yeah, well, if they ain't saying it, who is? And why can't they say it? You know what I mean?
Right. I mean,
the foreshadow.
Well, yeah, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. We won't get too far into that stuff for this show. So y'all know the drill. Leave your comments. Maybe we'll talk about them on air. Ready, set, go.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right. Us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, brother. How are you?
Living the dream, Tim. Living the dream.
It's like a nightmare, though, isn't it? It's like there's nonstop, constant. We've got some interesting subjects tonight.
Not if I just pretend. And I do want to give a shout out, of course, to our friends over at WYSL listening today, but also our new friends down the Southern Tier as well, down in the Hornell area, WLEA and WCKR, also broadcasting because of WYSL taking over those stations. So we're
got friends down there. I'm gonna have to tell them I'm on the radio in your town, brother. Like some of my wrestling family, my extended wrestling family that's from all over New York State. I have a particular group that I actually really enjoyed hanging out with when we end up at these big tournaments, and they're from the Hornell, Canisteo area. So like that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
They may
Hornell's
actually listen.
Southern Tier, right? I didn't mislabel that. Hornell Southern Tier, or do we consider Southern Tier? Okay, great.
Southern Tier is pretty huge, bro.
It's like I had someone tell me like Southern Tier is like really only like Binghamton area. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure like it's kind of like all the area down there.
It gets way out west, man. It's big.
Like it's like almost like I don't know if like Jamestown, probably a little bit too far west, but like
I think it kind of
everything
comes
like
down.
east of Chautauqua County, on over to like till you get to like downstate.
So we're growing. Is it one of the Soros funded radio stations? Because that would be awesome.
No, well, I mean, it's now the WYSL is partnering with them. So for now,
Fantastic.
we're on the air, same time, Thursday, 8 p.m. So if you're hearing us for the first time, glad to have you listening to us on A Free Solution. Make sure you catch our podcast. We got a whole backlog there. Hope you have fun with the show tonight. We're gonna be talking about a couple of heavy topics, a couple light topics. We're gonna be all over the place, as we often do on this show.
Absolutely.
But again, either way, glad to have you. Glad to have the folks online too. Comments already pouring in. Legacy Zach, Matt, Shelly. Hey y'all, thanks for joining us this evening. All right, so Tim, what do we want to talk about first?
All right, so look, we've got to talk about lame duck World War III. Dude authorizing missiles to go from Ukraine deep into Russia, and Vladimir Putin's response is that means perhaps nuclear war. He's as measured as you can be, but it's like this has been freaking me out the entire time. Like, I don't like what's going on. So what do you think, Kevin? Can we impeach this guy?
Should we impeach Joe Biden?
Yeah, impeach him. Just get rid of him.
We impeached Trump right before he left office, so why not impeach Biden too?
Yeah, it seems to be the way.
No, yeah, I mean, like in terms of the missile strikes deeper into Russia, it's man, I do worry about the escalation too. I think that's definitely a thing to be concerned about. I'll say that the Russians kind of have known that this was going to happen for a while. They
Right.
moved a bunch of their air bases like further east in the Russia, so that like they'd be out of range for these like American provided missiles and the UK and French provided ones as well. Like the Ukrainians have had these for a while. Just like the stipulation was like, hey, don't strike too far into Russia, right? The problem for the Ukrainians, and I'm sympathetic to this, is like, okay, here you are, you're a country, you're being invaded, a foreign power is occupying chunks of your territory, and you can't strike deep enough to hit airfields and logistics lines to disrupt that invasion, right?
I'm not unsympathetic to the Ukrainian people. I do feel as though there have been plenty of off ramps to this current situation before this escalation that I think were manipulated. Like Boris Johnson going and delivering let's sign an agreement, and then saying let's not sign an agreement. But there's a real problem with a war of this nature. I think that we would all be better off if we turned it down a few notches. There's not a win-win here. The only win-win would be peace. And I don't know, something 500,000, 1 million Ukrainians are dead now. The infrastructure is destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of those, unfortunately, civilians, because the Russians have been bombing civilian population centers because their government isn't very nice. And unfortunately, there's also somewhere in the range of 700,000 dead Russians as well. Many of them conscripted and just thrown into this conflict with inadequate supplies. It's a horrific situation. And the Russian government could, to be fair, just stop doing this tomorrow. They aggressed here. I understand the point you're making in terms of like, hey, there could have been an option for peace.
Plenty of options for peace, I think. I want to be clear about that, right?
A lot of time, like the Ukrainians didn't quite want it either, but like the Western powers, the UK, the US didn't really want it either because like, hey, we can't really let this type of aggression stand. So like, unfortunately, the cost of doing that is many Ukrainian and Russian lives. And now it's hard to do that without like continuing escalation, right? And again, is this another escalation? Is this a good move for the U.S. to do right on the verge of transitioning like presidencies? Would Donald Trump have done this anyway? Like maybe. I mean, he's going to have Marco Rubio as the Secretary of State. He's going to have was it Mark Walls is another guy? It's a national intelligence director. I forget what the title is going to. Yeah. I mean, Tulsi would be more skeptical, but
she's pretty anti-war. And I don't think it's fair to label her a Russian asset, which is all too often the case in mainstream media right now, especially from the left. I do think she is anti-war. I appreciate her anti-war stances. I respect her anti-war stances, especially as her serving in hospital type facilities during conflict. Like
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Like I think that's great. I think those voices deserve a platform in our government. I think that's important, and all too often completely missing in higher levels of
Yeah.
government.
Yeah.
Where
So
they're going,
hopefully
hey,
that
no, you know,
voice of skepticism, even though I don't always appreciate how she is a little bit nicer about the Russian aggression, because like the Russian government's worthy of criticism. They've done a bunch of bad stuff. She gives them a pass, and Assad a little bit more of a pass. I like, but the skepticism of U.S. imperialism is a good thing. And I do want to get to this comment from Matthew on Facebook, who says, the problem is I heard that the Ukrainian military can't use these rockets alone, so it is actually U.S. troops aiming and firing those missile systems.
Yeah.
No, it's not really the case. Like if you go follow creators like Preston Stewart, Habitual Line Crosser, like those two are really good creators on TikTok. And I see them on Twitter now too. They've explained some of this stuff that they were checking out. Americans had trained them to use those systems, but the Ukrainians are operating them independently. It's still worthy of criticism to say like, hey, well, the U.S. is still supplying these arms, and they wouldn't be able to do this without American training and provisions. So is the U.S. culpable for the damages and the casualties that these actions produced? And that's what the Russians are saying. But
and that is what Putin is saying. They're changing the rules of engagement to say if a Western country provides Ukraine with missiles that damage the interior parts of Russia, we will consider that an act of war by the country that provided those weapons. They're saying it. They're making it a law. Like I know
then
that
the U.S.
Putin's word is law. There, I get that. That is a valid criticism of that dude for sure.
And he's made a lot of threats to attack, Western powers. Most of which has come in the form of like kind of cyber attack type of stuff. And Facebook memes. We know how Donald Trump stole the election in 2016 with Facebook memes. We all know.
Did. And with the help of Putin, he's always been Putin.
That's right. That's what I mean.
Puppet, so
I mean, but also like on a more serious note, like possibly like there's a big like internet cable cut between, was it like Finland and like mainland Europe, Germany, Denmark, stuff like that. So that might have been the Russian government doing that.
And certainly that could create havoc, and that certainly can threaten people's lives. Like communication is very important in a civilized society. It's certainly transmission of information just when people are getting hurt and stuff like that. If we minimize that's a problem. So
or hey, I got a conspiracy theory for you.
Oh, I love it. Lay it on me, brother.
Is Elon Musk? He's just trying to promote Starlink out there. Don't need those underwater cables if it's all satellites.
I saw that. I kind of chuckled, but you bringing it home is actually kind of hilarious. That is absolutely perfect.
I was like, all right, let me hop in on this conspiracy theory.
See, Kevin and I coming together on a conspiracy theory. We love it, man. The Elon Musk is a savage dude. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
he will stop at nothing to put Starlink everywhere. By the way, I saw one of those Starlink lineups the other day, or it was a UFO, and I'm just not sure which.
Could be either or.
Or could be both, I guess.
Could be both.
Could have been communicating with an alien. That's why all the little Starlink droids had to line up, and they just sent a signal to my house. I tried to get a picture of it, but I was not fast enough.
Nah, they move pretty quick.
Yeah.
Those things are pretty cool, though. I am genuinely excited for as like that network gets built, and we had to, like, I think the first time you were ever on the show, we talked about like rural broadband and
we did
cable, and like this may eliminate some of the need for some of that as the technology advances. So
I'll be honest, even back then they were starting to offer it. They're like, look, if you have a little satellite dish, we can get you. You don't have to wait for your fiber optic line. Do you remember that was the day that the Freedom variant got called not a real libertarian, because I was trying to respond to what my constituents wanted to talk about, the fact that they were 1 mile away from the main fiber optic line, but could not access that line because it was going to cost like $1 million for that last mile to get to their house. And that was absurd. It was absurdly high price. It was something like $600 a foot. It was insane. We contacted another provider, a local rural electric co-op, and they're like, well, we could do that for like 200,000, but we need the money up front, and it was just like, so there was no real answer. They probably still don't have internet. That's the amazing thing of this multi-billion-dollar rollout of fiber optic cable, that people can't actually connect to it if they're not right on the main drags where it's at.
Yeah,
it's always been bad. It's always been bad.
Good catch, Tim. All right, so we went off the tangent there, but we got a comment from Rock Control on X, who says, just because we disagree with Russian motives and actions doesn't mean we can deny their reality. They have shown through history that they're willing to lose millions to maintain sovereignty and even burn their own fields and towns. Don't kneel, but we respect their power, and that could mean our end. Yeah, maybe, man. Like, to me, it's like that in this situation, the Russians kind of created this problem for themselves, right? Like, it's their government is bad, and now they're wasting millions of lives, of young men with possibly a lot of potential, like, in their own country, a whole generation slaughtered for what? Like, I don't think that there's really a good case to say, like, they were doing this to protect their sovereignty. Like, I'm sorry, I don't believe that.
Okay, so arguably the CIA was there. We had bases of operation. We had bioweapons labs there, or dual purpose labs there. We absolutely did. We absolutely did. Victoria Nuland admitted it, Kevin. I mean, she admitted it on the floor of the Congress that we have them there. Would we tolerate? So just even if we tolerate that, having that like kind of thing,
research labs in a place is not the same thing.
Would we tolerate that kind of thing in Mexico? Would we
having just like research labs?
But the question is, would we tolerate?
It's not biological weapons labs. That's Russian. You're drinking KGB. Russian propaganda, dude.
I'm not taking. This is Victoria Nuland, Kevin, the Project for a New American Century. She admitted it on the floor of the Congress, right? Like, this is not something I'm making up. This is a real thing.
It's something someone else made up.
Victoria Nuland made it up. That would
Russian
be absurd, right?
Made it up.
Victoria Nuland is a Russian propagandist, then.
No, I'm saying that that is not like a real story. That is like a twisted story of what actually happened there, and that there's never any danger of Russian sovereignty in that situation. Like, Putin talked about how he felt that Ukraine was part of Russia, that they are culturally Russian, and that therefore it was totally just that they take their rightful place as they had in the Soviet Union and like controlled that country. That's the whole thing. He talked about it. He's talked about it a whole bunch. That it's straight imperialism, and for the same reason it's a bad idea for the U.S. to get involved in wars. It was bad for Russia to get involved in this war. It was a dumb idea, and maybe they genuinely thought that they're biological weapons there, in the same way that the U.S. government genuinely thought that like Iraq had those too. Like, it was still a bad idea that caused a lot of death and destruction on both sides, and like they shouldn't have done it.
Arguably, that's a pretty good point. Like that point, I would concede to you. I still think that there is the very real issue of, it looks like we're denying them waterways. It looks like allowing Ukraine into NATO was an act of aggression, that was a bright red line that we had agreed to, that Russia had agreed to.
They wanted to join the EU.
Which is understandable, but as
Russia
would not want them to do that, would also be understandable.
What business is of Russia if the Ukrainians join the EU?
The issue of Mexico, and if they wanted to enter. Okay, but would we tolerate it, Kevin?
If the Mexicans
we saw it as a
BRICS
threat to our sovereignty, would we tolerate it?
If Mexico is not going to threaten our sovereignty,
if we saw it as a threat to our sovereignty,
I don't like that premise, because I think it's absurd.
I don't think the premise is absurd at all. I think it's a pretty fair question. Like, we can argue over whether it's a legitimate threat to Russian sovereignty. But if we made the case that Mexico was entering into partnerships that threatened our sovereignty, what would we do?
If we invaded Mexico, we would be the bad guys. That's the answer to that. We should not get involved in a war under flimsy justification about the threats to our sovereignty.
And yet we do, right?
Yes, we do. And that's bad.
So there's, I agree.
When the U.S. does it, it's bad. When Russia does it, it's bad. They shouldn't do that. Shelley understands a real threat. I'm more concerned about Canada.
Certainly, if they were conspiring with Mexico, we'd end up with a big problem, right?
They have that. That was the Zimmerman telegram situation. That's why we got into World War One.
See, and they learned a lesson.
But in this case, it was the Germans trying to collude with the Mexicans, and the Mexicans are like, no, like we got enough problems with the US. We're not getting involved in this.
Yeah, we're not going to anger our neighbor to the north.
Yeah, like they were the US and Mexican governments were like fighting amongst themselves for other reasons at that time. They didn't want any of that.
And then they could figure out they could just get along a lot better.
Mostly that's where NAFTA, comes in, and
NAFTA, like, arguably, free trade is free trade, and I'm a big proponent of free trade.
Yeah. All right.
See, we already agree. Free trade is free trade.
Free trade.
We've got to an agreement just like that.
It's good. I mean, now we're gonna have maybe slightly less free trade in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting.
We're gonna have our 40, maybe 60, maybe 1,000% tariffs on China. Who knows?
It's just a negotiating strategy. This guy is a deal maker, Kevin. That's the part that people seem to be misinterpreting.
That's the hope, right? The hope is that that's the strategy. This is just negotiation. It's just to scare the Chinese government into getting us, better deals at free trade and actually honoring patents and not like stealing American IP, which they're doing a lot of, or the reason I don't think that he's going to do this is because like we pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership when Trump became president last time, and that was like a pretty good trade deal that like explicitly excluded China and would have like benefited a bunch of other like developing industries, like in like I think Vietnam was one of them, but like Korea, like there's all these like Asian nations that like would have been better sources for like manufacturing, and nope, pulled out of that for some reason.
Just like
and Biden could have revived it, but he hasn't done that. Said he made the economy worse and doubled down on that stuff, and voters punished him for it. So
it's interesting to me that it's always like Obama won under the pretense of being anti-war. Trump has won under the pretense of being less aggressive, war-making kind of machine. And that's a winning campaign. Now let's just deliver it. You know what I mean?
That would be nice. So getting back to the war topic would be good. We'll see what happens if there's any escalation. Donald Trump's already had conversations with Zelensky, and apparently Zelensky was happy with that. So I don't know what that signals. Apparently Elon Musk was on the call for some reason. Well, Tim, this is where the weave comes back together. We're adopting the weave.
We got it. We have no choice, man.
It's a winning strategy.
We've got to follow the plan, the pattern.
Right.
It's working.
So anyway, we don't know what's going to happen. All right. On that note, we do have to head to break. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Yep.
Do we got like, what does it take? About 2 minutes to do Matt Fuino's homage to his friends at A Free Solution?
Sure.
Now's the time for an hour of clarity in a nation of great disparity.
We even had a section of disparity there in that first
Toxic partisanship never to stray. Across the airways they teach libertarian true state preach. Till the freedom variant shows the way. Challenging the news every day. Don't just see there's games. They're spinning stories, stoking flames. Tune into A Free Solution. A broadcast media's noise pollution.
Yeah. All right. I love it, man. Thanks again, Matt. That is fantastic. What a good deal that was. Look, Kevin, you and I are into free market solutions, and we have a guy out there coming up with a free market solution to fund Ukraine.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? What's it going to do?
Boris Johnson Former Prime Minister of England is on Twitter hawking T-shirts, brother, to support the Ukrainian cause. I
did see that.
wish that I was joking. Like,
No, you're right. Hey, you know what?
I
Listen,
wish I was kidding, man.
More power to him. If that's how you want to fund stuff, like, all right, like, I can, I can get behind that more than I can, like, taxpayer dollars. That's
Sure.
it's a bit easier for me.
You want me to read the tweet? I wonder if I can screen show it.
Yeah, probably could.
If I do it right, I can do it. Let me screenshot this and screen share it. Wait, I got to put that back up. This is where it gets confusing for me, guys, but bear with me. I'll get it.
So, Tim, I'm going to have to edit all this out and there's the podcast.
This is a live radio show.
It's like 30 seconds of us mumbling and then figuring out how to share something on the screen.
Yeah, no, it's bad. It's bad. Oh, it's not one of the tabs. Dang it.
Did you lose it, Tim?
Yeah, of course.
No, man.
Of course. So I have to do it a different way, and I'm not sure how to do it. So that's lame, and I can't do it. So how do you like that? I'll try to for the next segment. We'll try to I'll try to get it pulled up on X. I had screenshotted it, put it into OneNote, but I can't figure out how to present that in StreamYard. I'm still like kind of what do you call it? A robot, an old dude that doesn't know how his computer works, something like that. I'm that guy.
That guy.
I am.
All
But
right.
yeah, so that was good. So what should we talk about next? No more let's talk about that University of Rochester thing. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit too. All right, so we'll head back into the main show and we'll talk about what's going on at the University of Rochester. I'll share a link to one of the latest stories on it, and yeah, we'll get into it.
And we'll talk about RFK in the last segment because he is going to be fun.
Yeah, that's it. Last segment's the weird one. That's how it goes, folks. You know it. All right, let's go back now. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
Hey, congratulations to Bob and Bob for adding a radio station or two to our broad-based listening regimen. Like, this is fantastic. These guys are doing God's work. Thanks to WYSL for helping Kevin and I reach people with a libertarian message. I'm thankful for it, Kevin. I guess that's what I want to say. It's just a really good thing.
Love being able to do this on the show. So thanks thanks to our friends at WYSL and our new friends at WLEA and WCKR down in Hornell as well. All right, so what we're going to talk about, we're still, for now, we're still a New York radio station, so we're going to talk about a Rochester, New York issue, and it's over. So if you're not familiar with this story, and I'll share the link to it in the comments so y'all can check it out. But if you're not familiar with it, some folks at U of R, students, had put up. Jeez, that turned out messy. So some folks at U of R put up a poster, a series of posters, in their minds protesting the Israeli war in Gaza, right? So that's what they're protesting. The criticism of this is that these four individuals who put up posters were anti-Semitic in their messaging. Right. And this isn't just like a couple random people saying this. This is people like Chuck Schumer talking about it on the floor of the Senate. And a handful and a bunch of other folks in the area talking about not liking these posters. And they would say things like they said they're targeting specifically people who are Jewish, but they'd say accuse people of being war criminals, of supporting the apartheid regime, of basically just doing different things to support the Israeli government. Like the U of R president was criticized in part because the University of Rochester has a pool of investments that includes like some companies either in Israel or related to Israel in some way. So this is the context for what it is. And so these students put up all these posters, these wanted posters all around campus, some of which I agree are a little bit nasty. And they were arrested. They spent a night in jail, and they face fines up to $1,500 and up to 7 years in jail for doing this. So, Tim, all that context, what are your thoughts?
Well, arguably, like what I'm going to say is probably where I'll getting some heat with like our conservative friends and people that I really think highly of, that I think are very close to believing in a smaller government. This foursome is charged with felony criminal mischief for making their case about what's going on between Israel and Gaza. And all I've ever asked is for my conservative friends to equate innocent life with innocent life, and I do not think that's being done on a big enough scale. When we get young people excited and upset about what they see as a major problem with the disparity in power as to what's going on in Gaza, they are seeing neighborhoods leveled, they're seeing babies pulled out from under rubble, like, regardless of your beliefs in the rightness or the wrongness of this particular military action, this war, I can understand where these kids are upset, Kevin. Like, I can get it. Like, does that make me a bleeding heart, crazy liberal?
Yes, possibly.
Yeah, I mean,
but no. I mean, it is like I think there's criticism of the Israeli government. I think there's not enough criticism of Hamas from this side, because they've done some like horrific stuff too.
I think that's
again,
fair.
Me being my mealy mouth centrist position, like, oh, both sides are bad sometimes.
Sure.
But like, yeah, honestly, the Hamas, like, they're terrible. They're bad folks.
Hamas is awful. That doesn't allow me to forget that there are women and children dying in this.
Yeah, no, they are. And again, Hamas being awful is not an excuse for the Israeli government to like be a bit casual, reckless with human life when they're bombing cities, right? Like that's, and I know like they can give their justifications for it, but yeah, like there's a lot of innocent people who end up getting caught in that, and that's horrific. So yeah, like again, my take on these posters is like a little bit gross to me, like that. But that being said, like to me that this feels like, and I'm curious if like if this feels like a speech issue, like it now. I'll tell you, like the reason why they had the charges that they had is because they put this stuff like everywhere. It wasn't a handful of posters. If you see like some of the, I'll share a link that shows some like photos of like how it hung up. Is like they would take hallways and like plaster the entire hallway with these things. But part of me still feels like this does seem like a bit of a speech issue, in that these are folks trying to express themselves, and possibly spending time in jail is a bit ridiculous to me. Like for this action, like if you want to have some restitution where you say it's a civil action and like the University of Rochester is going to like kick them off campus or make them pay for like the cost of cleaning up the stuff. Okay. I think that seems fair. But like,
that takes it out of the free speech. There's consequences for free speech, right? Like,
yeah.
You have the right to say what you believe. You have the right to advocate against people. You have the right to advocate against wars. Like, these are things that are absolute American traditions that I support. Now, if they did harm, clearly creating a mess is doing harm. I think that some things can rise to a level of slander. I'm not sure that calling for people to be locked up because of their beliefs on something is slanderous. I think if they are at least somewhat accurately presenting that set of beliefs encapsulated by the people that they're criticizing, they shouldn't be liable for that. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, clean up your mess, behave better. This is against the rules on campus. You're being warned, like, I get it. Like that. That's all okay.
Yeah. And John, I'll say John Thuman on YouTube points out correctly. Those posters targeted individuals, not the Israeli government. I meant to put like anti-Israel in quotes there,
Right.
in the title. So if you're seeing this later, that's what that was supposed to be. But yeah, no, it targeted individuals. And again, some of it, like their connections to Israel seem like a bit tenuous, but they are, Jewish. So like that's why a lot of people like, I don't know, seems a bit anti-Semitic. But here's the thing, and again, I'll keep going back to this, is they can do that stuff. They can put out their crappy opinions, even if they're like putting out stuff individuals. Like a lot of these folks are semi-public figures. It is appropriate for sometimes those folks to be targets of criticism, in the same way like that you and I could be too, right? Like, I
Sure.
put myself out there like as a radio host, as a congressional candidate, and I get criticism because of that. And I expect that. If someone put out like nasty, lies against me, which did happen during my campaign, like, okay, yeah, man, like they can do that. It's their free speech to say things that are, maybe a spin on what my beliefs are, and that stinks. I don't think people should go to jail for it. I don't think you should damage property in the process of exercising your speech. There should be consequences for that.
Sure.
But I think this is again the crunchy libertarian in me is like, we should not be throwing people in cages over that, though. That's overkill. Even if the posters were nasty, even if they were unfair, even if they harassed individuals, you should not throw someone in jail over that. I don't think these misguided kids should like have their entire lives ruined over it. Again, like if the school felt it was warranted to kick them out, like, okay, we can debate that, but that is a different set of serious consequences than actually throwing someone in jail.
I'm with you, man. Like I can see where there are consequences necessary. Now there are consequences that could definitely be imposed on these kids. Locking them in a cage is a problem. Let me ask you a question. As I'm reading one of the articles that you sent me about this,
and I say kids, they're like they're in their 20s, like, so
they
but
look
just
like
to be
kids
clear,
to me, man.
they do. That's because you're an old man. That's
correct. You look
saying,
like
but
a
like
kid
they're 19, 21, 21, and 19. But
yeah.
so just I say kids, but I mean like young college students. Like I think there should be some wiggle room for young people to be stupid as long as someone doesn't like actually get hurt.
Right. Now, how did Ido Netanyahu get dragged into this story? It's unclear to me. Does he work for the University of Rochester?
I think they just put up a poster attacking him. I wasn't entirely clear on that one either.
Like that I can't. So I don't understand why he got dragged into it. Guys, what I'm talking about from the article is that the targets of the poster campaign was Ido Netanyahu.
He was So that was this. I remember how he got dragged in this, and I'm reading this. It's he. And I'll read from the WXXI articles. Accused his brother Ido Netanyahu war crimes related to serving in the IDF during October 1973 Yom Kippur War. He's a radiologist. He was an online physician that is linked to a Cornell practice that's affiliated with a hospital that is part of the U of R network. That's how he got, which is again, there's you got to get the whole like poster of connecting dots here for that one. Like, why are they putting up his face?
So on some level,
and not even like a while ago, he's like a contractor. Like like you got like 5 degrees of separation there.
Yeah. Okay. So on some level, that just because he's a local figure that is not necessarily involved in any of this, that does not give those kids the right to target.
No, it's like, again,
it's
jarring against like, I don't know. I'm not saying what they did was appropriate. I'm just saying that they probably shouldn't go to jail for it.
Well, they could. I mean, I would be all for it if Ido Netanyahu wanted to be like, hey, you can't say this stuff about me. That's not my concern, and that's slander. I would be okay with him making that case. Like civil consequences for this behavior, I'm certainly comfortable with. And civil arguments in a court of law, I would also be in favor of. Those things I'm fine with. But like I think we'll fall back on is that locking these kids in the cage is probably not in anybody's best interest.
Yeah, that's it. Again, they cause damage. I think you should pay for that damage. Like that's my libertarian take on a lot of like nonviolent crimes is like most of the time the better solution is to just have someone like pay for stuff, right? Like just like, okay, you're gonna have to pay for all the like you use an adhesive to glue all these posters all over the place, including on like classroom materials and chalkboards in the hallways. You're gonna have to pay to clean that up. It's gonna cost us $40,000, and y'all are gonna have to pay that back. Like that seems fair to me.
That seems fair to me. I think we got to where I thought we would get to, where we basically have just end up at exactly the same point. You know, like this is there is no such thing like as freedom from consequences for your speech. So that's that. Don't throw me.
Yeah, and Shelley says we're the individuals responsible for the decision-making process of the war. If it's not anti-Semitism, which is horrible, ugly free speech protected by the Constitution. Yeah, again, and like officially, like they are not being punished for their speech, right? Like that's like officially, like it's the reason why they're being punished is property damage, right? Or they're accused of property damage, and they will have to decide if they're going to, you know, if the county's going to press charges against them, and if they're going to go through a trial or, you know, talk to a judge or plead or whatever they're going to do in this situation. What I imagine is probably going to happen is they're going to plead guilty to like probably like paying a fine to the government. Like that's like almost certainly what's going to happen in this situation. They're probably not going to actually go to jail. They're probably that. But yeah, again, you have the right to do that. But also now these kids, their names are out there. Like it's in the article that I shared. It's going to be out there for, you know, for a long time that they caused this damage. And I think we're a bit reckless in how they targeted individuals who had very, very tenuous connections to like what's going on in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You know, very tenuous. That's wrong. They shouldn't have done it. It's bad. All right, Tim, you got anything else to say before we close out this topic and head the break?
No, but I mean, yeah. Once again, thank you to the WYSL audience. Thank you to Matt, Shelley, John, the people joining us from X, Rock and Troll. Guys, we appreciate you. You're very important to us.
All right. Right on, folks. So thank you all for listening, wherever you're listening. Appreciate you being here. We got one more segment coming up right after this. Talk to you soon here on A Free Solution. All right. Oh, you found the Boris Johnson tweet. Congratulations.
Oh,
that guy, like, I think he's funny, and like for a British politician, he's actually not terrible on a lot of stuff. Like again, judging by the curve of UK politicians, but he always looks like a dumpster fire, man. Like and I know
he does it on purpose. He deliberately styles his hair that way. You can see it in a myriad of pictures from him. Sometimes it's
I know
all flopped over to one.
Even when he was prime minister, like he looks like he literally rolled out of his bed like from a night of partying in a suit, and then just like woke up that way. Is like doing a walk of shame home. Like that's just how he looks. Like
Fetterman, my kind of politician. Kevin.
That's it. That's exactly what it is. Like it's totally Fetterman vibes.
Yeah,
that's what it is. But you just don't like him this time because of
no, I'm all for him raising money for Ukraine however he wants to. That is fine. That certainly is a free speech issue, and I'm sure the money will get used to feather his pocket like all politicians do, and perhaps provide, some soup kitchens and stuff like that. It'd be great. Like, so go buy a shirt from Kiev Designs and pad Boris Johnson's pockets. Like, it does.
Maybe. Hopefully it goes really to the right place and helps people out in Ukraine rebuild their homes. And
I guess the pension or the retirement plan from being a leader in the British government doesn't pay as well as one might think. So you have to sell T-shirts on X. That was my conclusion.
That's really just see. He's getting into the drop shipping a bit late, but he's getting there. All right, so let's see. We got a couple more times. We'll talk about our our buddy RFK Jr.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk about some of his policies, and then we'll see if we get to the Javier Milei stuff too.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I'm ready, man. Like it could be a pretty short and sweet one because it reflects a lot of what I say about, which is why I loved it, of course. But what a lot about what I say about how inflation relates to gross domestic product and how expanding money supply hides certain metrics. He managed to hit a couple of points that I've talked about several times in the past. So whichever way we go is fine with me, brother.
Well, so we'll start our RFK and we'll see if we get to the Malay stuff. And I'll just I'll make a quick pitch to our audience or anyone listening out there. We are looking at ways to expand our show, and we are looking for sponsors right now. If that's something that you have a business and you want to get a sponsorship, maybe on a more national level, we are looking for some folks to help us out with that, and to help yourself out with that with sponsorship, because it's going to be reaching some major markets with the expansion that we're hoping to do, and we need a couple sponsors to make it possible.
Yeah, that would be great. It would be a lot of fun. We'd do a good job for them.
Yeah. So
we'd have a hard time letting them control our messaging, so they kind of have to accept where we're at,
It's not where it is. Like, so as we're looking for sponsors, and if you're listening to this podcast, you're listening to, because this isn't going out of the radio, you listen to the podcast, you're listening to the one of the live streams somewhere, or catching this later on YouTube or whatever. If you're a business that's looking to reach a national audience, we're looking for a handful of sponsors. We're gonna have some pretty competitive packages. Send me an email, contact@afreesolution.com, if that's something you're actually interested in, because we're trying to get out to a bigger audience. Not quite ready to like announce what that is yet, but if you want to be part of that, you want to get in on that, you can help reach that national audience too. Help us reach that and help your brand reach a national audience.
And yeah, exactly. I would love it.
Yeah. And as a Tim and I, you're not, the sponsors ain't gonna control our messages, folks. Tim and I are gonna keep being Tim and I, because that's what people like. So what we're gonna do. All right. Your message is not offensive; it's honest.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Shelly. All right. So on that note, we're gonna get back into the show. Let's pick this one. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
Kevin, I'm here. And once again, thank you to the WYSL audience. Thank you to the people that just joined us down in Hornell. Thank you to all the people that are leaving comments with us tonight. Guys, I'm bringing back the 80s. I don't know if some of you people on the radio may not see my gear, but I'm telling you guys, the 80s are coming back. And I've got like kind of a baseball-y, bowling kind of looking shirt on. It's coming back, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm ready for it. RFK is going to lead the way, because we used to argue over things like fluoride in the water in the late 70s. And now it's come full circle, brother. It's coming all the way back around. Like Ronald Reagan just got reelected because Democrats jumped ship and brought it home for the big guy. Oh, wait, no, that's Joe Biden. Brought it home for Donald Trump.
Yes.
Anyway, where we're at is right after our show last week, Kevin. Apparently the very next day, Donald Trump officially nominated RFK Jr. to be the head of the Health and Human Services, the largest budget in the entire federal government, larger even than the Pentagon. This guy is going to be in control of the world.
I mean, it's all Medicare, Medicaid, like
sure, but
what it is.
That's not a good story that way.
No, that's who, and you know who's going to be in charge of those programs? Dr. Oz.
Boy, we've got a lot going for us, don't we? We are in great shape, ladies and gentlemen.
Good hands. But the Health and Human Services thing, our buddy RFK, known decapitating whale enthusiast,
dead bear
dead bear jokester.
picking up and throwing into Central Park kind of guy. This guy is zany. He's zany. He's like Boris Johnson without the hair. He's that zany.
So yeah, so he's gonna be the guy, and he's a bit skeptical of the health establishment, to say the least. So you'd mentioned the fluoride thing.
Yep.
I am fine with fluoride in the water.
Yeah.
I know.
As a
shocking.
libertarian, Kevin, I would not want to take your fluoride away. What I would say is, if we're going to subsidize fluoride, we can subsidize fluoride at your tap for pennies. It'd probably be cheaper. You could have your own fluoride attachment to your kitchen sink. That's all RFK's saying. If you want fluoride, you can have it. It's freedom, baby.
I don't know that he is saying that, though. I think he's more of a, this should be illegal because I saw some studies saying that high concentrations of fluoride are bad for you. Which, to be fair,
your IQ.
Yeah, to be fair, if you have too much of anything, it can be bad for you. But there's some studies that if you have something like triple the normal dosage concentration of fluoride that's in like typical U.S. municipal water systems, it can have an impact on IQ. Although that study, there's some fuzziness about those studies, but that's what it is. There are studies out there that say that, but it's usually in much higher concentrations than what you'd get. And to me, but there are some positive trade-offs to having low levels of fluoride in the drinking water, which is that it does help cavity prevention. It does help rebuild the calcium of your teeth. Pretty good studies on that too. So yeah, I don't feel super strongly about it. I mean, I think a good chunk of my teen years I grew up on well water. So that was
I was going to make that case. Yeah, Kevin, I was going to make that case. For a very short period of time, went from age 5 to age 10. We lived in where there was fluoridated water. The rest of my entire life, before 5 and after that, and I don't have a massive amount of cavities. The cavities that I got when we were drinking fluoridated water. So
did it cause it?
I don't know. Did it? And look, I don't think I'm
maybe you just
as eloquent as I would like to be, and I would blame fluoride.
It's not all the lead paint chips you're eating. It's not all the
I didn't eat paint chips, bro.
Not all the beers. It was just the fluoride in the water. That must have been what it is.
It could be a beer. Yeah, it could be that. But arguably, there are look. Western Europe has banned it. There are studies that say fluoride is basically unnecessary because we all brush our teeth with fluoride toothpaste, and that is all that we need. So I don't know where to go with this. I don't know that having fluoride in your tap water is a good idea. I do think it would be a good idea to study it some more, even though we used to study it back in the 70s and 80s, and I don't know what the conclusion was.
Well, I mean, the conclusion was basically there are very little downsides to the concentrations that we're using, and it helps prevent cavities in young children. And so we stopped studying it because it was just kind of the consensus. Is it worth studying again? Sure. I think that's fair. If he wants to use Health and Human Services to study it, we do dumber studies through them. So sure, man. That's fine. I don't actually have a problem with that. My actual take on the whole fluoride thing is it should be up to individual towns. You should do your thing. I come down on the if Rochester had a referendum on it, I'd probably vote keep the fluoride in the water. Give me that free subsidized fluoride. Yummy.
So let me ask you this: if they did in fact Rochester take the fluoride out of the water, would you fluoridate your home? Would you fluoridate the water in your house?
No, I mean I'd probably just continue using fluorinated toothpaste and you'd what the way to fix it is you just do the dental treatments with the fluoride more often, that type of stuff. So there's solutions to it. It's just it's one of those things where it's a relatively low cost way of preventing cavities in a lot of families who may not be taking care of their children's teeth as much. That's the whole thing of it. I don't feel super strong. I wouldn't, it's fine. I think most people would probably be okay. But it's a relatively low cost thing, low stake thing. But like interesting that like we're going back on that. I think like the bigger things that I'm more concerned about with RFK is more like is he going to take more aggressive action on like different types of food products? So like there's food dyes. There's is he going to like force people to like engage in healthier lifestyles? Is he going to ban seed oils? Tim, should we ban seed oils?
No, even though as you know, I take advice from Joe Rogan when it comes to my health, and he's a big advocate. Like he doesn't really like the vegetable oils and the corn oils. He recommends your coconut oils and your olive oils, as does Dr. Brett Weinstein, who is a molecular biologist. So look, I'm ambivalent about that. I realized that once I decided to switch to coconut oil, I realized that I don't really cook a lot of things with oil anyway. I'm more of a baker. I use a lot of butter to cook my stuff. So even whatever amount of seed oils I get is pretty insignificant. I don't think that at that level it's unhealthy. I would like, again, we get into this issue of the government has a valid role. If it has a valid role, it's a purveyor of accurate, up-to-date, important information. And if there is like toxic substances in seed oils, let's identify them and communicate that.
I mean, like there are people out there studying this type of stuff, and like basically, like I've looked through like now a million like Twitter threads and like Googled this because it's like, okay, like let me not assume that this is stupid. Let me look at it, and like from what I could find, like it contains certain types of like omega-6 fatty acids and like this other type of fatty acid that like people are saying it's bad for you, but it exists in a whole bunch of stuff, right? It exists in like seeds and nuts that you eat all the time. It's fine in small doses. It's just like any other thing. It's not really bad in like big doses, even in the concentrated form and the seed oils. Like it's really fine. It's also like a trade-off, right? Like for the people who are like, oh yeah, go like do beef tallow instead. Like if you eat a bunch of beef tallow, it's also going to be bad for you in different ways. Like there's also carcinogens that can pop up when you like overheat like meat products too. Like, and again, that's not going to stop me from eating a charred steak. I understand that it's like there's things about it that aren't the best for me. I don't think the government should stop me from doing that. And it's in like it kind of bugs me that a lot of conservatives and like people call themselves libertarians are like, oh, like he's just trying to make us healthy. I'm like, bro, so are the people who are trying to ban like big gulps in New York City. Like they're trying to make us healthy too. Like I'm not about that. Like let me make my own decisions. If I want canola oil on my food, which I think the only thing I really use that for is like I use it to season my like cast iron like Dutch oven. Like that's basically what in my cast iron skillet. I use some canola oil for that. If I want like that, or I don't know if they want to ban peanut oil or sunflower oil, corn oil, I know is one of them. It's fine. I don't really use those all that much. I don't think it's a good idea to ban those. I should be able to use those if I want to. If it's a substitute for things that are less healthy for you, then fine. Like it doesn't, it's not a thing that like the government should get involved in.
I only to the point of if there is some truth to the rumors, or either we can dispel them or whatever. Like I do think they have an obligation to provide us with accurate information. I do think that they've failed at that over and over and over again. And so the government that gave us the food pyramid, I question, do I think that RFK would arguably be a more responsible steward of those kind of things? Based on what I've seen him say, based on the conversations that I've heard him have, like I'm actually cautiously optimistic. I know, but I am cautiously optimistic.
Like
I know you're down on the guy. I know you are.
I am down on the guy. Like I think like his views on vaccines are like straight up bad. Like he's not a vaccine skeptic. He's anti-vaccine. I don't agree with that. I think the evidence doesn't point that direction. I think he's bad on like seed oils, and I think he's gonna try to like micromanage our diets. I like from a libertarian perspective, that seems bad to me. Like we used to criticize like the nanny state people who wanted to micromanage our lives and like what we put into our bodies. And like I don't want some like busybody big government Democrat telling me like what to do and telling me how to eat.
What I want to do is make sure, again, like with the fluoride, if you want tartrazine yellow, I want it to be available to you for you
Good.
to add it to your own Fruit Loops. Like I just,
Man, if
you could get
there,
it however
listen,
you want it.
Tim, you can
There's a
buy stuff with
solution.
natural dyes in it, like right now. Nothing is stopping you. Like you look at listen, like
I don't eat that stuff. That's junk food, man. That's why I mean that stuff's like that's nonsense. Joe Rogan
got you
does
on that one.
not allow Fruit Loops to
Doesn't
be part of
allow
my
you.
diet.
All right, he doesn't allow you.
I mean, I'm
no,
just saying his suggestions, which
no,
I
like,
honor.
You can go buy like natural cereals. Like half the stuff you buy at like Aldi, it has like natural non-GMO ingredients you want. Like I like the Aldi peanut butter better than like the Wegmans or the Peter Pan peanut butter because they add less sugar.
Yeah.
I just like the taste better. Like that's fine. You can go make these decisions right now. If you want to buy Fruit Loops that are only made with like natural like dyes, go get it. Like they're already there. You have that option. And for the people who are like Europe bans all this stuff, like man, no, they don't. It's just different names most of the time. Like there's stuff that Europe bans that like we don't ban. There's stuff that we ban that they don't ban. Like it's just a mess of regulations. And like for the most part, like I want the government less involved in making those like decisions. Like I think that there's a role for like legitimately dangerous stuff, but like for the most part, like food dyes are fine. Like
okay, but does
I
the
want to be able to keep
government
eating them.
have a role in commenting on and coming up with suggested plans to deal with an increase in obesity, to deal with an increase in a lowering of our average age of death? Like, does it have like an obligation to provide us with information about that?
The average lifespan has gone up in the last couple of years. Like, so it went down during COVID, and then it went back up again, and now it's back up to new highs. Like that's where it is in terms of like
as compared to what? Like we're dying younger than other countries by years. Like on average, we're at 77, and like Japan is at 83 or something.
It's not necessarily because of like health outcomes. It's more violence and motor vehicle accidents, which are different sets of problems. That's what's lowering the age.
We may have to revisit this in a future show because I've been reading up on this. I think that there's an issue with obesity that could be solved by providing better information to people, and I think that.
So, Tim, are you ready to redo the food pyramid? Is that what you're asking for? Yeah, because that's what you're asking for. Is you want RFK?
I don't think that's again. We're getting to a point where that's absurd. That's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for good information about what's important about our food supply. Like what are good information, right?
Just like the food pyramid, Tim, was good information. Best information they had at the time.
So what are you saying? What is there's no role for the government in providing information about what's healthy and what's not? Is that what you're saying?
Tim, I'm going to be the radical libertarian today and just say abolish it. Just like stop. Like, no, they can get out of this. And like, you know, there will be different like health advocacy organizations who are going to make their cases for what's healthy and what's not healthy.
Like Joe Rogan.
Like, I mean, he's one of them. Like he can make his case. And like, I don't think it should go either way. I don't think like the Joe Rogan point of view should be like imposed on us, nor do I think like someone should prevent Joe Rogan from being able to talk about like why he thinks like seed oils are bad. Like that's fine. He can do that. He can advocate. He can make his case. And I'm not a big fan of like, we got to like cancel him and pull him off Spotify because he's spreading misinformation, that type of stuff either. Like we could just let people like hash it out. Like, I don't think that we need to get the government involved in the food pyramid stuff, the plate stuff, the like advocacy of any of this. Like, I think we would be better off if the government just stayed out of it.
We're gonna have to check out this demographics of life expectancy provided by our friend Matthew, and arguably, what you're saying has a broad-based appeal to me, right? That is one of the reasons.
Sorry, man. I looked at the time. We gotta go.
Oh man, all right.
We're out of time. So listen, folks on WYSL, you know the deal. You keep listening. You go find our podcast. You find our show. Folks who are just hearing us for the first time over at WLEA and WCKR, y'all can go find us anywhere you find podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, like whatever podcast service you're using. go find us a free solution. All right. So we got to head out. Thanks for joining us. Have a good evening, radio audiences. Online audiences. We're going to keep going.
Yeah, we are.
All right. That's a Saved by the Bell. No, listen, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep going.
We're gonna pull this website up and see what it says. World of Meters. Have to switch back and forth to typing in .info. And then I still want to talk about Javier Milei, and maybe we save it for another segment, but we'll hash out some of the ideas that I want to discuss there. Once I get this up, if I can, you probably could have got this up like 3 times by the time I'm doing it.
No, but I think they're kind of part of my point was like, I think that there are other factors in U.S. life expectancy, compared to say like, Europe, which is, but like the average European life expectancy is lower than the US. I mean, you could pick individual countries that are better, but I think part of it's like other types of lifestyle factors. It's not like their specific diets necessarily. It's more like they're less likely to die in traffic accidents. They're out walking a lot more. They're, I mean, some of them like are eating more in moderation, but like, again, to me, I'm like, you need to have some self-control on some of this stuff. Like, I don't think that the government needs to save you, like, and prevent you from eating McDonald's. Poor RFK, the photo of him being forced to eat McDonald's with it's actually funny. The Trump team put out something funny. I laughed about that.
Really good.
And I get it. Like, RFK was in on the joke. I get it. But
well, I am having a horrible time typing that up. Perhaps it's because I am not good at typing. But
I mean, like, I can share my screen. I got like a different one that I usually use. I also had trouble like typing that one in for some reason. I don't know why it wasn't working right. But,
good.
Like,
so it wasn't just me. All right.
I mean, I think we're just both like, sausage fingered.
Yeah, and I'm typing around all my rat's nest of the wires, so it's extra hard for me.
All right. Okay, so I put up a couple of these up here. All right, U.S., Denmark. We'll put up Japan. Like you can see, the United States is, like I said, it's slightly lower than some of those places.
Yeah,
Japan 84.7.
Well, you made a claim that I thought was worth challenging, and that was that the life expectancy in the U.S. is hitting an all-time high after a slight decline. I don't know that that's accurate, and I think that we're experiencing a downturn as you see where that ends up.
Yeah,
on the
well,
chart
so
at
this
that
ends in
part.
2021. So like it went back up in 2023. So I'm not sure why they don't have it up to 2023, but like the the latest data that came out was basically saying that like it kind of went back up to where it was at the baseline before.
All right. Well, I listened to podcasts that seem to try to get me to infer that is inaccurate. So
I watch TikToks that tell me it is inaccurate, Tim.
That it is accurate? Right. I know. Source material. Double check our source material for sure.
But yeah, I mean, like, I just don't think. I don't get why everyone's on the like, oh yeah, we want the government to like be involved in this stuff now.
There is a tiny bit of that's actually hilarious for me, right? Like there's an absolute absurdity to conservatives. Look, there's been a realignment of the parties. Like, let's not forget, Donald Trump was a Democrat. Like, RFK is a Democrat. Tulsi Gabbard is a Democrat. You know what I mean? Like, everybody at the top end of this are reformed Democrats that's changed parties because the Democratic Party has become a party of neocon, neoliberal, civil rights abusing kind of identity politics, nightmarish stuff, parasiting off of the common, everyday, middle-class, working man taking all of their value and destroying it. But anyway, so it to me is very interesting. I think that overall they're all kind of crazy and that we're mad with power. They're mad with power.
Yeah.
But I am excited. Yeah, there we go. COVID. Perfect.
RFK Jr. pledged to declare
Exactly.
COVID-style health emergency on day one.
That's
Tim, what
my
are your thoughts on
man.
that one?
I love it. I love it because it's RFK, Kevin. I want to be clear. Only because he's the greatest hero this country has ever known.
It's yeah.
I
Could be.
mean, I'm not backing off my position now.
No, yeah, you're committed to it.
That's right.
But like, this is the exact thing I'm worried about. I was like,
My
all right,
back
man. Like,
is against the wall here.
Yeah, we rightly criticize Fauci and like the Biden administration for the draconian like health policy intervention stuff, and now like, dude, this guy. Man.
Look, when he first hit the scene, I was going through his stuff, and I'm like, all right, this guy's an absurd authoritarian. This is nutty, but his most authoritarian policies never got implemented ever. Some of the things that he did that arguably were good were sue companies into cleaning up the Hudson River, and I'm kind of like, was all that overblown, and how much did it cost versus the benefit? And I have a hard time knowing the right answer to those things because it gets lost in a bog of politics.
I know he's a guy who makes like money off of like doing this stuff. Like again, like you're always skeptical of like people who like make money like trying to like be busybodies and like get government to take action. Like he's one of those guys, like that's what he does, right? He makes money off of like, okay, we're gonna say that this one chemical is bad for you, like fluoride is bad for you, so we're gonna like get together some class action lawsuits and make a whole bunch of money off of like those lawsuits, or we're gonna get a bunch of people together and scare them into thinking that Indian Point nuclear power plant is like bad and is polluting like the Hudson Valley and like downstate, and then shut it down. Oh, what do you know? We now no longer have a reliable source of like baseload power for New York City. Great, good job.
Yeah, well, I mean, New York City is too densely populated, and some sort of executive action needs to happen whereby half the population is forced to leave. I'm very Malthusian
Tim,
on New York City.
They're already doing that because like no one can afford to live there.
Did you see Kathy? Oh my God,
I should have
brought it up on the show. Kathy Hochul literally goes on a rant saying, hey, look, we just saved you 40% because they were going to start charging entry fees into Manhattan of $15, but they changed the rule before they implemented it to only $9. So she's like, we saved you 40%.
Are they doing congestion pricing now? Is that a thing?
I literally think it's an entry fee in addition to using the bridges to enter Manhattan. So it was going to be $15, and now it's only $9.
Take the train in, tourist.
That's what. Chat. But who wants to ride on a train, bro? You got to deal with the National Guard sitting next to you, all armed and like AK-47'd up. Like, I don't trust those guys.
They don't go on the actual trains. Come on.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm just saying something about like, I would say that when I was young, like in my 20s, there was a broad appeal to going to New York City. You know what I mean? It was very exciting. I went a few times. I went to Rockefeller Center. I did all the cool stuff that I could think of doing. I've been to Peter Luger's Steakhouse. I've been to Morton's. Like, I've done the fun stuff that New York City had to offer. And now at 58, I'm just like, I don't think so. What a hassle. All the walking I had to do. That's absurd. I want none of that. And look, I like being active, but like walking down a dirty city street with thousands of people near me, I got no interest in that. None. Oh, I hung out in Times Square, walked around. This was back
Times Square.
There was Times Square, bro. Not like Disney version Times Square that we got now. This was Times Square. This was the 80s Times Square. And it was
I'm pretty sure the 80s Times Square was like terrifying, man. Like I read about New York in the 70s and 80s, like those are the bad times, man. Like that's when it's like legit scary. They're like not even close to what it is today. And I'm not saying like, there aren't like a lot of problems in New York today, but like, man, like I read about like the 70s and 80s in New York, like actually like dystopian. Like there's a reason everyone kept making movies about it.
Bro, it was dystopian. It was, I mean, it was strip club after strip club. It was bars everywhere. It was like, you know, one gang of dudes like arguing with another gang of dudes, and me just like walking by them and going into a bar and having a beer. Like that
I mean,
was
if that's your impression of New York, yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, listen, like I don't mind like the walking stuff. Again, actually good for you. Like I think more people could do with
shut
a bit
up,
more
RFK.
walking.
I don't want
But
to
I'm
hear
like,
that.
yeah, no, what I'm saying voluntarily. That's what I'm saying. RFK doesn't need to like make us go work on like the collective farms in order for us to get some like sunshine. Like we just do it. You know, or take your Ozempic, like whichever. Like
Yeah, take your old. Hey, at least you had the mob. And look, honestly, the mob was nicer to its customers than the government. Like the government, like the mob would cut deals to let you stay in business. They just be like, all right, you can't pay me this week, but you got to pay me a little extra next week till we get caught up. Like the government would be like, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're taking your car, we're taking your house, and we're closing your business because you didn't pay your sales tax for a couple quarters. Like that's how that goes, man.
a couple quarters. I don't know, man. Seems generous.
So, guys, I do want to kind of run through some of my standard riffs about economics and use Javier Milei as a backdrop to it. CNN, Reuters, back about a month ago, reported that poverty in Argentina soars to more than 50% as government austerity bites, which kind of means, I guess, apparently means settles in, like Javier Milei is cutting the government back,
right?
Caused an increase in the poverty level. And Javier Milei was on a podcast that I happen to be listening to today. And I found his takes to align with what the Freedom Variant often says, that metrics can be hidden in periods of absurd inflation. So one of the things that he said was poverty-based metrics, like based on earnings in a household in a system of rampant inflation, can hide real poverty because everybody's numbers are changing so fast it doesn't even matter. In other words, if the what they're earning and what the GDP is growing at are adjusting according to the rates of inflation, people are actually broker than what it appears to be. Does that make sense?
That right. If you're measuring poverty based on like a certain level of income, assuming like less inflation that you have, then yeah, people are struggling even more. Which you're making the argument that that's the case, like in the U.S. specifically.
I'm using it as an analogy
or generally anywhere.
Right. I'm using it as an analogy to prop up some of the things that I've said about the economy in the recent past. Yes, that would be correct. A couple other points that he made that we don't necessarily deal with, but we were being threatened to be dealing, to having to deal with. But there were substantial amounts of price controls in Argentina before he took office, and he lifted those price controls. That caused the appearance of an increase in poverty because all of a sudden certain necessities and certain food-based items shot up in price. But he makes the point that while that is in fact accurate, what was really, really happening was that all of the price controls didn't matter in the world. Like you could charge $3 for a gallon of milk, but there was no freaking milk. Like it's fine. It would like, so people are only consuming X total number of dollars of $3 a gallon milk. But all of a sudden now at $7, they're consuming as much milk or more because now the milk is on the shelves. I think that's a more straightforward analogy. Would you agree?
No, yeah, I agree. And typically what happens in these markets too is like as prices start to stabilize and supplies like even out, if you don't have any further market distortions from the government, you probably end up with lower prices and there'll be a new equilibrium.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna hit two more highlights, right? He's basically saying that the stores are no longer empty. Things are in fact more expensive, but they're available, and that is actually a net benefit for society.
Yeah.
While that happened, real wages actually grew faster in the last quarter. I believe it was a quarter, but it was a translation from Spanish to English. And occasionally, when you're listening to a translation, things get lost in that translation. So there was some confusing metrics as to whether he was saying inflation is now down to 2.5% a month or 2.5% a quarter, or if it was 2.5% annually based on a rate that just came out in October. But what he's saying now is real wages in Argentina are growing faster than the most recent report of inflation, which he felt was a very positive metric. I would agree that that is probably a positive metric. And I'm sorry to interrupt you. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, like, on the inflation thing, it was like a couple percentage per month, but like, which had gone down.
Yeah.
Which is still much, much higher than what we're ever facing in the US. So it's still like the annual rate is like 23% or something. Like it's crazy. But like the inflation rate has legitimately gone down, and it's gotten like a lot better than what it was before. So it's starting to level off, and hopefully we'll like flatten out totally for them based on the results seem to be working, like of where it worked.
Yeah.
Working.
Yes. CNN is reporting a year over year inflation rate of 109%, whereas in the last quarter it was like 8 or 10%, I think, according to what you were saying. But according to the podcast, it sounded like it was lower than that. So
yeah, no, it's like, yeah, like the running like annual inflation rate last I looked was like 23% or something. Like it like gone like way down from what it was,
from upwards of 200%.
Yeah. So it's like a bad situation that required like a pretty aggressive like solution and drastic reduction and the size and intervention of government in Argentina, and it's starting to pay off, right? And as long as the country has the nerve to stick with it for a while longer, like they'll probably be, the fastest growing economy in the Western Hemisphere.
Correct. So, and now check this out. One of the branches of government that he did away with was that people who are like pensioners or on fixed incomes for whatever programs that they have in Argentina have basically what's a case manager, right? And the case manager, which he did away with this entire program, but the case manager would have to countersign their checks and charge a fee to countersign the checks that they were getting from the government, sometimes as much as 50%. He eliminated that entire bureaucracy. So people that are living on fixed incomes actually got an increase of up to 50% of their basic take-home monthly pay.
Just remove the parasites.
Just remove the middleman and make them go away. And remove the parasites. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I thought that was very exciting news. I would have loved to share it on the radio show. But we were having a blast making fun of RFK, so that was fine.
Yeah, that's how it goes. All right. Well, on that note, I think we'll call it a night. Appreciate all of y'all joining us for this evening. You've been great. Love the comments. You rock. Have a good one.